Now, Stake has just signed horse racing legend Frankie Dettori as brand ambassador. So what does that tell us about, perhaps the future of horse racing as a global betting product? Tom Waterhouse joining us from Waterhouse VC. Tom, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Andrew.
It's a bit of a coup, is it not? Or is this what Stake are doing, sort of trying to attract these celebrities?
Look, it's really interesting because racing's sort of been at the cornerstone for UK and Australian bookmakers as part of their offering. You know, you have obviously all the sport, but racing is front and centre, where the crypto bookies generally have not offered racing. And Stake went out on a limb probably a year and a half ago and did a deal with Racing and Sport, which is a listed company here in Australia, for their racing product, and has really tried to get into this racing space. And they're obviously the biggest crypto bookmaker in the world. So it's great for racing. And the fact that they've done this deal with Frankie Dettori, there probably wouldn't be a more famous jockey globally than him, is really exciting. And we're very bullish on racing. It's such a great gambling product that it will take off in the crypto space. So hopefully Frankie does a great job for them. They've done very well with ambassadors Stake. They've obviously done that deal with Drake, which has been huge for Stake. And hopefully this deal goes great. Racing expands for their business, and it's good for businesses like Racing and Sports and also for the racing industry, because obviously if they're taking bets on horse racing, paying the fees, it's good for the racing industry. They get more income.
What market are Stake in at the moment? How
they're
large
global.
are they?
So Stake is really, they've got a unique user experience. They've got the ability that you can deposit in any type of currency or cryptocurrency. And also they've marketed in a very different way, you know, using influencers. They've also streaming. They've got their own streaming channel in Kick, which they've built into actually a very big business. You know, they were on Twitch. When they were no longer able to use advertising through that streaming platform, they built their own platform, Kick, and they're two young founders that have done an extraordinary job and built a multi-billion-dollar business in relatively a short space of time. And very impressive and amazing that the largest crypto operator in the world is Australian. You know, Australia is really punching above its weight because it's got Stake, obviously, and sportsbet.io, which is run by Tim Heath, who's another Australian ultra successful multi-billionaire, and then you got the Shuffle guys out of Melbourne also. So three of the top crypto operators all being in Australia.
Given they've got the facility to actually use crypto in betting and gaming, how popular is that now?
Oh, it's very popular because obviously for an Australian, you can use your Visa and MasterCard, and it's not regulated in Australia. So if you're betting with the likes of Sportsbet and Ladbrokes and all that sort of stuff in Australia, you're not using crypto. But for countries where it's much harder to deposit, it's in many ways frictionless because you can deposit straight away, you can withdraw straight away. You're not having that delay. They know your money is there. You know your money's there. And yeah, it's been very, very popular. And you've seen with those businesses, who would think that the largest operators or the fastest growing operators in the world are these businesses that really are only 4 or 5 years old. Well, Shuffle's only 2 and a bit years old. So it's amazing the growth.
Another company in focus at the moment, Bet365, based in the UK. In fact, you were making the point earlier to me that it is family owned, grew from nothing in the UK, but I gather they're exploring a transaction, potentially selling it or maybe floating it.
Well, I mentioned Stake. Who would have thought that 5 years ago they'd come from nowhere to be such a large operator? Bet365, really, they built the blueprint for this. You know, 20-something years ago, who would think that FTSE 100 company like William Hill or Ladbrokes or any of these large storefront, large bookmakers in the UK would be overtaken by a family business out of Stoke? And Denise Coates and the family, they have done an amazing job to build just a huge business in Bet365. You know, they've also not only built a huge business, they really changed the game. The whole in-play, they really advanced technology, their online offering, and they gave back to the community. They gave I think the largest taxpayer over the last 10 years in the UK is Denise Coates, and they own Stoke football team. And look, if she decides to sell, well, what a journey to build such a large business, to have a global footprint, and really a huge success story. Whether she sells or not, it's you'd sort of think it would make a lot of sense for a large operator, but there's competition issues for something like Flutter or Entain, so I don't think they they could are in the running, and then those US operators, they may want the tech and the footprint, the global footprint that Bet365 have, but it also might be private equity, maybe like Blackstone or something like that. I'm sure they'd want her to stay on for a period of time, and obviously maybe they IPO, and maybe she just decides to keep running the business. She's done such a great job in building such a big business, and really, yeah, an absolute star. So I don't know, I'll be watching. We don't invest in the gambling operators. We option up tech suppliers in the gambling space. So we're obviously very much focused on the industry, but I'll be looking from the sidelines, and yeah, it's very exciting and very interesting.
What would the advantage of IPOing in the States be for Bet365? Sort of unlocking that vast capital, I guess,
I think
stateside,
so.
but also what, accessing the US market more broadly? Or?
Look, I don't. Out of the chances of what she does, I would have thought that IPOing is probably low, only because they'd expect her to stay on for a period of time. It does unlock liquidity and value, but she's going to be tied in if there's a successful IPO, I imagine. I think it's probably like a private equity play. You've seen that with a whole bunch of different businesses where private equity have come in, but again, it's not our area of focus. I would have thought favourite is private equity, and maybe another operator from the US that wants to buy their technology, their global footprint, runs second. Probably no deal is just keeps on running. It's got to be third pick, and then maybe IPO or something like that.
Is there also potential that she's seen the writing on the wall? Because I do gather that in the UK in particular, there are some regulatory headwinds at the moment, and that may also apply to stake as well.
I think it's a very good point. I think the game has definitely changed. So Bet365 have pulled out of China and some other markets. They're really focused on those regulated markets now, and their regulated markets are becoming tougher and tougher with higher taxation and stricter restrictions on knowing your player, what you can advertise, and so on. And there's a real benefit for scale. And you've seen a business like Flutter that's now got a 30 billion plus market cap. They're really building scale globally. So if you're going to be a regulated player, you've really got to have that scale. So they've got to look at ways that they can build scale. And also, you've really seen that there's two markets. There's the white market, which Bet365 is focusing on, and you've got the large listed operators like an Entain and Flutter. And then you've got these crypto operators that are growing at ultra fast rate. And they're really in many ways like the Bet365 was 20 plus years ago. Bet365 don't want to play in that space, I assume. And so they've got to either play in that space of scale and from a global standpoint, or they've got to go, well, it's changed and we'd like to do other things. And again, I don't know what their thinking is, and I've obviously only seen the headlines similar to you, but yeah, if she sells, what a success journey, and if she stays in, well, she's going to be a success anyway, because she's adapted over the last 20, 25 years so well, and Bet365 is a behemoth.
Just before you go, Tom, interested to get your point of view, given in the wake of the election, the thumping win by the government sets it up for a large mandate. Do you think they're likely to have a crack at gambling advertising, betting advertising?
Look, for us, we don't focus on any operators, so it's not an area we focus on. But the issue in Australia, if you were focusing on that space, betting operators, that area has been hit. You know, it's significantly different to what it was 15 years ago, and there's regulation, restriction. I think you're in a cycle globally that it's going to get stricter and stricter. But Australia, really, that area has been focused on, but it's only sort of 15% of the market, online sports betting and racing. The main bit of the market is casino games, so pokies, lotteries, and so on. And the big issue, I think, for the Australian government, again, I don't want to speak for them, and I don't know what they're focusing on, but because you're not allowed to bet online for any type of online gaming, there are lots of operators operating offshore, and they're untaxed, unregulated, no restrictions, no player protections, and so on. And I think that's probably an area that, for the Australian operators, obviously you pay huge taxes and stuff if you're the likes of Crown, Star, and all the land-based operators in Australia and the lotteries in Australia. Well, they want to have their market protected. And I think from the government's point of view, they want to get some taxation in, and they want to make sure that Australians are being protected, that money's not going to some random Eastern European bookmaker that's accessing this market. So I think that's probably a bigger issue. But I think, to your question, there is going to be ever increasing, in regulated markets, ever increasing restrictions in this cycle on terms of advertising and what you can offer customers.